All right, so we're going to learn how to do the area of a triangle today. So start here at the top of your notes, and you'll see that we have a formula right here. It says A equals half times B times H. So that's half of the base times the height. And when you look at our formula chart, that's the exact same formula that you see on the formula chart. But I don't know about you guys, but multiplying by a fraction is not always my favorite choice. So what I prefer to do is actually a different formula. So right here on your notes, if you could write or, and then you can do a different formula if you want to. You can do area equals base times height divided by 2. Now, why can I change that? It's because multiplying by a half is actually going to end up giving me the same answer that dividing by 2 would give me, which is kind of a cool trick. So you can choose whichever formula you want today, but I'm going to predominantly be using this one on the right here because that's the one that I prefer. And let's talk about also why are we taking half of this? Yesterday with rectangles and parallelograms and squares, all we did was area equals base times height. But now today, you're doing the same thing, area equals base times height, but then we're dividing it by 2. Why are we dividing it by 2 or multiplying by half? Why are we doing that? It's because when you are looking at a triangle, you're actually looking at half of a square. So if you divide a square in half like that, there you have 2 triangles. So a triangle is half of a square. Or you're looking at half of a rectangle. So you can divide it the other way if you want, like that. And now I have 2 triangles. So a triangle could be half of a rectangle, or I might be looking at a parallelogram. And my triangle could be half of a parallelogram. So either way, whether you're multiplying by half or dividing by 2, a triangle represents half of either a square, a rectangle, or a parallelogram. So that's why the formula looks a lot like the one that we did yesterday, but we end up dividing by 2 or multiplying by half at the end. So now let's talk about the height. Yesterday we talked about where the base and the height were on a square. So on a square, you don't have to write this part on your notes, but remember we had base down here and we had our height on the side. And then on a rectangle, we could have our base here. And the base could also be at the top. And then our height was on this side or this side. And on a parallelogram, it got funky. Our base was either down here or up here. But sometimes they try to trick us and put a number on the slanted part, but that was not our height. That was wrong. The height is actually the distance between the 2 bases. So we could have done this and had our height right here, or sometimes they drew a line this way and they said our height was right here. So they could have done it in the middle too, right down the middle. Any of these would have been our height on the parallelogram. So on a triangle, the height is kind of like the parallelogram. It can be kind of funky. Sometimes our height is going to be easy. It's going to be this right here, height. And then our base would be the blue line I'm drawing right down here. So sometimes it looks really simple like that. But other times it could look like this, where our base is down here. And then our height wants to go from the tippy top point all the way down to the base. Well, here's the tippy top point over here, all the way down to our base. But they don't usually draw a straight line like that. They usually do that dotted line. So there you go. And there's your height. So the key here is the height is always perpendicular to the base. What does perpendicular mean again? Well, there's two types of lines. There's parallel lines that look like this. These are parallel. And those mean that they never touch. So I always think of like a railroad track or something like that, where the lines just keep going and going. They don't touch. They are just straight perpendicular lines, or maybe like a ladder. The rails on a ladder are parallel. And then you have perpendicular lines like we were just talking about. And perpendicular lines, they cross like this. And when they do, they make a right angle on both sides. They make a 90-degree angle. These are perpendicular. So parallel lines and perpendicular lines. All right, so on your triangle, your height is always perpendicular to the base. So how are we going to find the area of a triangle? It's a lot like yesterday. We start with writing the formula. You always want to start with writing the formula. And then all you have to do is plug in your measurements into the formula. So you're going to put your B in for the base and your H in for the height. And then you're just going to work your problem step by step and label your answer at the end. This is an area problem, so all of our answers should have their units squared at the end. Or you can have it say squared like this, but most of the time we're going to put that little tiny 2 at the top. All right, so looking at our formula chart, and once again, you can do area equals base times height divided by 2 today. So let's look at our first problem. I'm going to start with the formula base times height divided by 2. I don't know the area yet, so I'm just going to keep that A just like that because I'm trying to find the area. Now, what number is going to be my base? Here it is right here. This is the base of my triangle, so that's going to be 6. And then my height is going to be the tippy top point of my triangle and then straight down so that I'm perpendicular, making a 90-degree angle to my base. And you can see that they already made that 90-degree angle right there for you. So my height is 5. And then I'm going to have to divide by 2. So now I'm going to follow the order of operations, and I'm going to have to do that multiplication first at the top. So area is going to equal 6 times 5, which is 30. And dividing by 2 is going to be the last thing I do. So 30 divided by 2 is 15. And it doesn't give me units on this one, so I'm just going to put units squared. And that is my final answer on this one. So now we can go down and look at the next one. And what are we going to start with on this one? Any guesses what we're going to start with? The formula. We always start with the formula. Area equals base times height divided by 2 is the one I'm going to choose again. So now let's find our base. And the bottom of my triangle is this right here. So area equals, the base is 24 times my height. Ooh, what are they trying to do here? Is it going to be 25 or 7? Which one's going to be my height? Seven is going to be my height. So it's at the tippy top of my point of my triangle and straight down. That's how tall my triangle is. 25 is not my height. It's just kind of like a trick, so we don't need that one. I'll scratch that out. Okay, so now I'm going to divide by 2. So 24 times 7 is the part I want to do first. It's 28, 14, 16. So now I have area equals 168 divided by 2. So 168 divided by 2. So area equals, oh, I don't want to write it there. Let me give myself a little room. Area equals 84. And this one does have units. This one is inches. So I'm going to put inches squared. Put that little tiny 2 up top. All right. We're doing good. And now for our last example, you can see how the height is not always put even in there on the triangle. They put the height for this one next to it. It looks a little funky, but we can totally do this. We're going to start with the formula. Area equals base times height divided by 2, because it's half of a rectangle, half of a square, or half of a parallelogram. All right, so my base is 12, and my height is this 24, because here would be the height of my triangle, right? And is this line the same as this line? It sure is, so I can say that my height is 24, and then that's going to be divided by 2. Okay, so 24 times 12 . Okay, so now I have area equals 288 divided by 2. So now 288 divided by 2. So my area equals 144, and this one doesn't have units, so I can also just put units squared. There we go. All right, so those are our notes again for area of a triangle. Go ahead and glue them into your journal, and we'll start our practice problems really soon.